Awesome. Awesome. Greg, it's awesome to have you here on the Fear Not podcast. It's been a long time since we were pursuing all kinds of crazy things in Africa and getting to know each other then. And it's been awesome to reconnect briefly. And I'm very excited to hear what you've been up to. I'm here with Greg Kerr. Greg, among other things, the introduction might take a minute, but among other things, an author, an entrepreneur, a veteran, former government employee. So a lot of diverse perspectives and cool stuff that you've been up to. So good to be talking with you, Greg.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I was reflecting back on our history, and we had this one interesting project where we were helping these women create a sewing center, put solar panels on a sewing center to create renewable maxi pads.
Yep, I remember
Girls in
that.
Africa are expected to stay home, and we found this like real solution. And I remember you telling
Yeah,
me like, I have a real heart for the young girls and kids in Africa. And he goes, sounds like a great project to get into. So,
it was.
yeah, no, I enjoy problem solving. And,
Yeah,
working in West Africa, there's a lot of problems to solve.
there
And
are.
yeah, my background, I did a gig in the Marines where I was at the national level intelligence services at the National Security Agency. Was inside the Pentagon the day after 9/11 because
Wow.
it was some skiffs. So the crash site was
Oh,
basically
wow.
classified. So they brought us down because we had clearances from Fort Meade to kind of pull the stuff out of the crash site.
Wow.
Uh,
That had to
and
be crazy.
yeah, as a young
I
kid
mean,
too,
it's probably still on fire at that point and everything, right?
it smoldered for days, right? So we kind of
Jeez.
staged where the Air Force kind of memorial is now. This was before then. And we kind of marched in there. And I remember a matter of fact FBI guy going, well, you know what you're going to see, so get some food in your stomach. And, that was like everybody, especially when I was
Wow.
young. I think it was a Lance Corporal or a Corporal at that time. And, didn't know that it was just going to completely flip. But I was a Spanish linguist, a Portuguese and Spanish linguist, and after that, they quickly pulled me out of that and put me into counterterrorism role. So that's
Wow.
kind of where how does a Spanish linguist kind of like get into the global war on terrorism? You're like be a
That's
very low
true.
priority in the Office
Right.
of Crime and Narcotics, and then I could attach something to an email. And that was kind of a low standard back in 2000, 2001, like to get
That's
involved.
true.
And yeah, so I kind of like went from that linguist position to a higher profile office at the NSA. And then with that experience, and I was in OAF 1,
Hmm.
uh, and then kind of got in that tornado of spending for the intelligence community on post 9/11. And so kind of rose through the ranks quickly. By 35, I was a 14. And so was everybody else around. There was younger people than me in charge of me and stuff like that because offices grew so quickly that if you had any time in there, you kind of grew up. And so 2 tours in Iraq, 3 in Afghanistan, and then the last tour in Afghanistan, I was attached to a SEAL platoon.
Hmm.
So as a GS employee, living down in the villages in that village stability operations effort.
Yeah. Wow.
And the commander of the team I was attached to is now Senator Tim Sheehy out of Montana.
Wow.
So kind of like
That's amazing.
wild that that kind of like happened,
It
and
is crazy. It's also crazy as I think back to like when you're in the military, you have a huge amount of responsibility for your age. Like you're saying, I mean, you just, even 35 in the military, you're like a dinosaur at 35 years old. And then you look back after a few decades later and you're like at 35, I didn't know my ass from my elbow and I was in charge of these multi-million dollar sensitive high risk things. I mean, it's wild, but it's awesome. It's
life and
cool.
death situations too,
Yeah,
high
for sure.
stakes, and
Oh
and
yeah.
now it's recognizable with wisdom. And I look around, and when I evaluate myself and others, I sit there and I go, oh, most people don't have that high stakes experience.
Yeah.
And so when I now as I exercise risk, I kind of notice that people around me,
Mm,
nobody's really a risk taker, and you kind of have to be with thine own self, be true, and say, okay, I am accustomed to taking risk. I can take these risks. The people around me are not, and they don't have that pedigree, and they don't have. So you can get frustrated sometimes at the slow pace, or like I had a business partner once. Every time she took a risk, she would call a lawyer. I'm like, that's the last thing you want to do before you take a risk. Is
Yeah.
not call a lawyer.
You spent a lot of money too.
Yeah, no, for them to tell you no, right? You already know the advice
Yeah,
is we don't take
exactly.
any risk, So, but it is interesting, and this is one of those. Just even if we look at leaders and something you can take from national leadership is this ability to act on little to no information. Almost, I feel like
Yeah.
sometimes when you look at what we could the the chaos of national politics or international politics. Like, yeah, it's a bunch of people, doing things off limited information, with
Yeah.
high pressure to do something, and high stakes. This isn't academia where you can just sit back and just like sit in your thoughts. It's a real world thing. So, um, I've always liked that model. And actually, this book I just completed, and I last night was the last kind of white glove editing. Uh, is
Really?
about being a skunk. I called it Be a Skunk. And the idea is kind of to model your MO like the skunk works in World War II, where you kind of have to
Huh.
you stumble forward in your progression rather
Yeah.
than put things in a laboratory. Laboratories are sterile, so I'm like, all right, everyone wants to be a lab, so I was like, be a skunk. And then it's like we're going to, as communities and individuals, experiment our way into the next level of economics,
I like that.
and, and build the next internet. So even with the skunk, I'm starting to think like, remember the first internet, how we kind of understood it, but it wasn't until like cats got involved that you started getting mass amounts of people to get into what do you call, like email lists and things like that.
Right.
So I kind of see where like there was this cuteness with animals that helped defang the tech, and
Interesting.
allow people to come over. So I'm like, okay, so if I put a skunk there, that maybe something cute and cuddly will help people move into this next economy. And this it frames also failure in a good way, right? So it's a good way to frame failure, any provocative action as well. If they do anything like in tech that kind of pushes the boundaries, you can always say, hey, we're skunk works, like, of course.
Hmm.
And then you can go behind the curtains and say, hey guys, what are you doing, what do you think? Like,
Yeah.
but we're supposed to kind of break things and move fast. And you know
I love that.
and now that like I'm here, I still feel like the ability to create some of these new systems. So the way that I now create code with AI is
Hmm.
that AI creates most of the code that
Yeah.
we build, and as you look at automation. Over the past few weeks, the models will be getting so good that when I just kind of speak to create, like I just have to describe what I want to happen, and then the
Hmm.
AI goes out and they can do it.
Yeah.
And it's been having certain problems, and people are documenting those problems. Like, oh, AI isn't perfect. But what we found is like if you stack the AI and then you make them interact in certain ways, you can start weeding out those hallucinations. Hallucinations in AI aren't they're not a bug, they're a feature. It's the imagination of the tool. And like
Hmm.
anybody's imagination, you need to put parameters on it.
Sure.
You have to help put that context. And so, like for example, for this book, Amazon's asking, what was the role of AI in this book? And I think there's people sitting there going, did you use AI to crank out a book? And I go, no, I used five, I used 5 AIs to crank out a book.
I like it.
And it's just kind of
Yeah.
doubling down on it to say, hey, if I
Yeah.
wrote a book on automation, of course I use the automating tool. We can look at things like that. We can all agree that photographers are a real art, and people respect
Hmm.
the artist. But what do you think the painter thought of the photographer?
Hmm.
It's like, hey, get out of
That's a
here.
good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, the camera didn't make that photo.
Interesting.
And and people still get portraits. You can still commission, painting and drawings and things like that. So it didn't kill it,
Hmm.
but it did change the dynamic and open up that medium to a lot more people.
Man,
And
that's
that's
interesting.
how it is now too. Even with this book, like it changed the way I looked at it, because every chapter opens with a personal vignette, and
Hmm.
in that style, I'm showing you that the AI didn't write it, right? Like
Yeah, right.
I wrote I lived the experiences, I
Mm-hmm.
articulated the experiences, I used the AI to do research, which all books need research. I said, hey, go out,
Sure.
find everything you can. I gave it advice and on where to look, certain YouTubers I'm watching. Then I worked with it to come out with an outline. Then I like built out that outline into chapters.
Yep.
And then I started putting my vignettes and kind of brainstorming with it to say, all right, I want to take this time that I lived in Africa and I lived in this really remote village. And I want to tie it to this idea that those villages are going to leapfrog into the next economy.
Hmm.
And the tool really did a great job of going back and forth with me to kind of explore and discover a lot of like, okay, like let's examine that. Like, and I got to tell it, my time in this remote village, and I noticed that there's high context and that reputation, and there's this like, kind of like reputation banking that you can help people out, and over the long term, the community will come back and help you if you're nice, kind of thing. And so I started extrapolating this type of data to say, okay, is this what we're going to experience once we all basically have all our needs met? And how does that change our daily operation, how we see ourselves? We're going to have this crisis of meaning. um, you know
Yeah.
there's a guy in German history, Otto von Bismarck, that won his election based on trying to do workers' rights. And this is relevant to veterans because so he kind of goes that industry under the Industrial Revolution, if you get messed up, your employer owes you something. Then World War One happened. And so German society basically said, we can't follow that principle because we'll bankrupt the state if a state employee was, put into warfare. So they
Mm.
they were kind of the first, and you know how we all kind of fetishized the World War II, World War One German military.
Yeah.
Everyone kind of went along and said, hey, like this is an exception to that worker rule. You're not responsible for the trauma or anything that really happens to veterans. But they did a lot of work on the private side to try to find out, and they figured out that meaningful work was the thing that kept veterans from killing themselves.
Yeah.
And that's what's kept me on mission, even through all the entrepreneurial trials, is because I know if I was going to a team meeting, if I had my name on my shirt, I would have sucked on the end of a shotgun by now.
Mm-hmm.
You can't
Interesting.
you can't go that way. You have to have some
Yep.
kind of meaning. So I feel like I'm always on mission, right? I've got something I want to do. I've seen something. My perspective has changed through warfare and
Right.
navigating bureaucracy that I can't go back to a job.
Yeah.
So.
So you keep all right. There's so much to unpack here. So you keep saying this new economy.
So
Let's
yeah,
talk about that.
so a new economy or even the new internet, right? Like, so some people make money off the internet. They figured it out. There's pay rails. You kind of have to. My argument is the next economy is going to be so efficient that all the pay rails and all the value generation will be built in. And the next level of apps are going to be participating in apps that you only know the people in, that they're localized. The internet as we know it is just going to turn into a medium in which AI is going to create value for us. Like
Mm-hmm.
right now, a lot of your interaction on the internet is fake. You're only
Yeah.
talking to bots. Bots can impersonate your wife. They can do anything, right? So there's going to become a time that the real internet, or the internet as we know it, uh, is going to be like the junk mail system. You get junk mail, you don't really pay attention to it, blah, blah, blah. It's going to get more bot friendly. So, like right now, it's anti-bot. If you go to a website, it's trying to make sure you're human.
Mm-hmm.
But when I have multi-agents and my agents are out there doing tasks for me on the internet, that's when I have to interject and I have to kind of do the I'm a human thing and help it get past
Yeah.
it and continue its work. And there's all these moments in which I want my bot to talk to the AI bot of that organization and have them coordinate. you know, Even with this book, I
Yeah.
want to do a school or a Patreon, right? So I told my AI to take my book, create a Patreon, all the tiers, blah, blah, blah. Why don't I just hand that to the Patreon AI assistant and it just build it for me? And I don't have to
Right.
go through the fonts and the sizing and all this other stuff, right? It can kind
Huh.
of do it for me. And I think that's going to be, what's going to happen is we're all going to flex. I've got hundreds of AI agents working for me. I have to copy, tailor, paste those for others.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm starting here. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm in Hollywood, and we have a big homeless problem. So the goal is, and what the book announces is, I'm going to bring the homeless to this next economy or this next internet. In that, what I'm building is, when we build these code, the AI is actually doing it, and then it needs to be tested. So you kind of describe it out.
Hmm.
The AI builds it, and then you say test it, and then it tests it and says, "Hey, this needs to be fixed. This needs to be. Do you want me to do it?" And then you go, "Yes." And so I just work out all day, and I find myself just telling AI, "Yes, continue. Yes, continue. Yes, continue." And then I'm like, "How do I automate that?" So I'm getting close to the point that I can just kind of keep my computer open and it can generate value. So how do I pass that to those around me that need it the most? So prisoners, or the homeless. And so now I'm sitting there saying, okay, so if I can speak an app into existence, but now I need a few hours and a couple hundred or a couple thousand tokens to actually make it work,
Hmm.
I can push that to the homeless and prisoners, because all they're doing is sitting down and they have no real job skills anyway. So for a cheap rate, I can get highly sophisticated coding done where these dudes are just on the street swiping right.
Right. Right.
And yeah, so like, so I'm sitting here, I was like, I'm in Hollywood, I'm gonna run to Netflix and I'm gonna say, all right, who wants to make the next show? And all the graphics and the computation are run by the homeless. And you're giving a tech digital job to the homeless, which helps bring them up. So I also have passive income bots, right? Like trading bots. So now that if I can inject money into money and trust is what I feel like I'm putting into the homeless community. Put money and trust into the homeless, and then I can break their cylindrical cycles of not being out to see past their nose and plan by putting it into these trading bots that create value over a long time. And so that ability to earn passive income is how I plan on bringing the neighborhood together, right? These rich guys and
Hmm.
these poor guys can participate in an investment app together that brings everybody up, right? Like we
So,
share.
okay, I mean, so let me ask you this question. So the history of humanity has been marked by rich taking advantage of poor, basic, and through various means. I mean, you look at why are clothes made in Southeast Asia, and Americans are wearing them, paying $70 for a pair of jeans that somebody who's paid like 65 cents to make. But then you can so is there an incentive for I think there is, but how does this democratization of technology, how are the people that are currently in the lead position, the westerners, how are they going to react to the fact that suddenly anybody can be basically as skilled and knowledgeable as them because anybody can use a bot? And how does that work in the new economy, where it's like the new economy could significantly equalize the playing field, but the people that are in control of that wouldn't want it necessarily to be equalized. I mean, take
No,
coding in general. Coders 5 years ago, they could just name their own price and do whatever. Now it's like, I, what is a coder? A coder is somebody who knows how to prompt now, and soon that won't even be it. So, how does that work in the new economy?
yeah, no. So some of the pushback I've already gotten, called a communist, like even the book, I can sit there, it's even
Yeah.
certain words and principles where I sit there and I go, all right. And I do lay out, I do say specifically, these are communist ideas that are communist outcomes, but through capitalist means. So capitalist means, like, there's three ways of earning values, like through your labor, through your interest investment, or through transfers, welfare, moving things around. So what I'm offering here is to say, like, I'm offering a democratization of code, which is a high tech skill to those that don't have it. And if you extrapolate, like, if I had this like computation power among the homeless, like this idea that like OpenAI and everybody's building these server farms, I'm taking the other route to be like, if I get the people, the masses to run computation, so anytime I speak, I have hundreds of people then behind me to run their computation, and then just put that into Africa and say, okay, now I'm going to have millions of Africans that can run the computation anytime I speak. And so I'm not server farming servers, I'm server farming people and their devices. Um, that doesn't completely answer your question. It does challenge these norms. There's a couple like complexities about it. Like one, the way you enter the next economy is where you're going to stay. That's a scary element of it. I do feel like we're going to
That's
come.
exactly my point. Yeah, okay. Yeah,
So it
that
makes it so
is
right now it
scary.
becomes a land grab.
Yeah,
That's where the wealthy have an opportunity now. So
yeah.
if you come in and you make the proper moves, you can come and start making. So one of the things I did, to take my own
Yikes.
medicine, is I
That's a
milled.
big statement, though. That's a big.
What's that?
Like there will be no class mobility.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's going to be really hard. Like, it'll be abundant. It's weird. We'll all be taken care of,
Mm,
but we're going to be really unhappy. That's where that crisis of meaning comes in, and there's going to be friction, right? When we're going to be fat, fed, and fighty. Like, and it'll be a revolution out of slobs, right? Like everyone's
yeah,
going to be so unhappy because they have almost too many calories, and
yeah.
it's going to be this radical alignment. Like I have some dystopian kind of views on AI, what are going to happen, but they all stem from
Mm,
centralization, right? And so if you look at protecting ourselves, it's then decentralizing. Take yourself off of these centralized AIs. Like I've made good friends with a lot of influential members of the Jewish community here in Beverly Hills, and once the Gaza wars started,
mm,
LA divided, a lot of Persians, and things are
mm.
going crazy right now. It's actually
Crazy.
my old job at the Pentagon, being a 11 analyst, I've really been able to network in with the Jewish community because I kind of focused on that area and I can give them some insights that they were happy about.
Mm.
Uh, and it all came true when I worked two Gaza wars, and they loved it when I said the Arabs call us and say finish the job. I was like, no one's going to stop it. And then they're going to turn up, and they're going to go north to Lebanon, and then bam, they take the Hezbollah out in a second. And now the Iranian nuke program's gone. You're just like, man, like, the Middle East switched real quick, and then the Abraham Accords. I think they're talking Syria is thinking recognizing Israel, right? Um, so yeah, so there are going to be these challenges to the status quo. Um, to practice what I preach, I built this tax lien app, which I just have to scale these bots that go out and do the research on all these municipalities that are selling off tax delinquent properties.
Hmm.
So a lot of this fund come in and just like start gobbling up land on the
Yeah.
automatic, and then that's going to be a major token for the next economy. So if you look at computation, like you should be scurrying after computation, and I feel like I'm doing this clever thing where people are buying Nvidias and they're buying warehouses and then power and all. I'm like, no, if I build a
You're
platform,
figuring I got to tap into the latent humanity, human capacity for computation,
yeah,
especially because you don't need much to leverage quite a bit given the AI tools.
there you go.
That
There you
is super interesting. So here's another. This goes to your happiness comment. Something that what I've liked about AI is it has definitely made people think about what is humanity, what is a human being even, and what is consciousness for that matter. But one of the things I was thinking about is this happiness concept. And if you look at just the quality, the standard of quality of life, for just call it a upper lower class in America today versus an upper lower class 30 years ago versus an upper lower class 100 years ago and 200 years ago and 500 years ago, like life is fucking great in the modern standard. Yet people would be very unhappy, most people, like feeling like I am lower class and I'm not getting paid. And there's this whole thing of like your happiness, unfortunately, oftentimes is your comparison to who you believe you should be comparing to, versus like, am I healthy, fed, safe, etc. And so if there are no resource constraints anymore, so everybody theoretically could be quite comfortable, middle class or better. Like what middle class would have been 100 years ago is forget about it. Like everybody could be middle class today because we can automate everything and there's going to be plentiful resources and there's going to be energy and so, but you would be less happy because like the whole thing is like you have to compete to be better, and if it's impossible to be better, can you be happy?
in writing this book is I, I kept in mind this definition of economics of the measurement of the pursuit of happiness, right? And so they kind of use this, I've heard it explained like a $5 latte, right? That's that happiness quotient. Too much, and you're like, I'm not happy here. And then too little, it's not, So you find that value. And so in that, and then I've been getting really like part of the dystopian is like a lot of like religious parallels or biblical parallels with AI. Everything from in the beginning there was God or there was the Word was God, the Word was with God. That whole idea that God needed language to capitalize an idea, and He used language to create. And then what is it? The first. That's the first of, yeah. So let there be light was a prompt. The 10 Commandments were fine tuning, and you start getting into it. And then I started to, like, as I was writing this and we're talking about economics and like economy is based on happiness, and the scriptures do talk about God having emotion. He's pleased, he's happy, he's this. So if he has emotion, then he participates in a market of emotion. So what is the God currency? What is the motivation? And this is something to explore. Like, God doesn't have these, like, does he have this labor requirement? Right. And so, so if you sit there and say, okay, what is creation without necessity and need? Well, is there some kind of divine example in that? And then you start getting into, I think even Jesus said, like, be thou as my Father in heaven. And he's like, everything I've seen is being done. It's like, does God participate in economics? In that, is that why he creates? And that's why he gets happy, sad, disappointed. He's not meeting his quota. Why would something piss you off? So yeah, I kind of see it that way. I also see things like I was thinking today too. If you look at like sex and working out as the evolutionary utility of those two industries have been taken care of, right? In the Western world, we don't need to be fit. We can actually be unfit and still fit in the system, right? We don't have to pick things up. We don't have to run from animals.
Yeah, that's true.
But we still go to the gyms, and then there's all this economics in around well-being and fitness, and then the exploration and the Tour de France and all these things that like people do crazy things. Sex is the same way. Like we don't have sex for procreation. Right. And there's a huge, everything from advertising to everything is kind of like sex.
That's the most powerful force there is.
Yeah, so I kind of sit there and go, okay, so then when work, we create the conditions in which work are in that same realm. I was like, oh, well, maybe we're just going to work for recreation. And that's where it comes into, maybe I'll go to the WeWork or go somewhere, where there a bunch of other people with like-minded interests are going to do some kind of a creative process. And maybe we call that work.
What the fuck do you do with the rest of your time, though?
That's what I'm getting into. So as I promote this book, I'm going to look into, maybe it comes into cleaning. Like maybe taking care of the things around you becomes relevant again. I go back to what happened in COVID, and I go, okay, when the government just handed out money and told you to stay home, getting along with your family got really important. And that's where I'm sitting there going, emotional intelligence is the new education. If everything's taken care of, how you get along and these new measurement systems. And this is where I'm coming in. Like, a lot of capitalism now is based on scarcity. And so you have this incentive to hoard. And what I feel like in these new systems that I'm preparing, like, it comes into reciprocity. And in a reciprocity measuring system, you're now balancing yourself at zero. So I'm now seeking zero. I'm seeking balance.
Because you have no fear that you will not have.
That you're going to miss out. That psychology changes, right? I don't need to be bigger, faster.
It'll take a while, I think, to get there. Because the people that were born into this system, I don't think you could ever fully get yourself there. You'd have to be born, I think, into that system to believe that you will ever not. Because I would always have the fear, like, when the rug comes out, everybody's fucked, and I want to be the one with a bunch of shit.
Yeah, and I felt that. I feel like I've went through this. Like, so one of the reasons I trust my perspective in this is, like, I put in the book, all's fair in love, war, and African startups. So
that is true.
I was in a rural African village. It still has witch trials. Like, chapter 1 starts in a witch trial that I witnessed in Quendine, a small village we built our first electric grid in. Well, when I was in that village, my partner, she was my romantic and my business partner. She's already back in the States. She was kind of a mental health casualty. Liberia, forget about it, especially
Mm,
Liberia during Ebola. She was
yeah.
27, 28, and we send her back. And, while I was there, she had enough and she took her piece of the company, which is all the money in the account, and said, boom. And I had to kind of like psychologically go, I don't even have time to be heartbroken. Like
Mm,
that was the first time I get dumped, and I was like, I wasn't even heartbroken. I was like, I'm so
mm,
scared. Like I had to really compartment thoughts and emotions, and I had to sell rebarb in the back of my lot to buy lentils to get me to the next invoice. Boom, 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 boom. Now here I am. I put in the book. I wrote my book in Bel Air, right? Like I'm in the Hollywood Hills now, and the climbing from that, right? So being left in the middle in the worst economy on the planet. So by mathematics and definition, Liberia is the worst place to do business.
mm.
And so you come and you sit there and you see the value flows in that village. And then I've had to work up through tier, tier, tier. And you're right. Like this whole time, my ability to get along trumps my knowledge. My knowledge actually challenges the people around me. When I start talking, people are like, oh, and then like they hear my background, like men kind of go, oh, like I thought I was a tough guy, like I don't make friends easy.
Yeah.
So now it is coming down to like how I get along. And I'm starting to notice even in tech that with people understanding that a lot of the skills are being automated, this is an interesting trend I'm noticing that they say just come happy. I do onboarding and it says, hey, when you come to this meeting, don't be distracted with it and be in a positive attitude because I'm coming in a positive attitude and I want this to be a good experience.
Interesting.
And I'm like, that was a good boundary to set. Come happy.
This is probably one of the more optimistic um, paths that I've heard when it comes to like where AI could bring us to the point where it's just about being a human and being part of a community and so forth. Because the flip side is like everything's automated. I had a discussion. I think I got it wrong in my discussion. I was talking about this with a buddy, and I was like, well, I think everything's going to be automated. So the only thing that's going to be valuable anymore is work. Like I will dig that hole, I will pull that thing, I will move that. But then he was like, well, because that's going to be automated too. Like when you and I don't know how many years, but it's probably sooner than you think. Like you're just gonna have a team of robots, like building all the houses, digging all the holes, moving all the stuff, all the cars, the trucks. So then it's more gonna be like who can create, who can think, who can be an artist, and then like everybody's an artist all of a sudden, and
Renaissance. So that
it's very
you're absolutely
interesting.
right. Because I think there
But
are going to be a double down on human work. Like I feel like sex work. That's one where if you look at all of these things I wrote down about connection, being in the moment, what does it do? I've been thinking about maybe even a whole series of books where it's like post-labor sexuality in relationships. What does it do? I'm in LA, which is probably one of the more, you come across some of the more liberated women, and the women are men here. Like they've
yeah,
been, I mean, there's the transgender like joke in that
well,
too.
yeah,
But then
right.
there's this like catcalling women drunk on the street, like walking
Mm,
down the street. Hey, I think I've seen. Like I'm like, man, the women are men. They're
interesting.
alpha. They've been forced to. They've bought into the idea that there is no difference and that we're. It's almost like that communist, like we're all equal workers under the system. So
Mm,
California kind of has that, and what is it produced in the women? And it's produced this like independent woman that is kind of a man in most ways. They make decisions, and it's even hard for them to even allow for traditional like alphaism to come in. And
right.
I came to LA with like a young coder. He was soft faced, long hair, and he like the women were just going crazy. And he was like, it's because I kind of look like a girl. He was like admitting to it. And so for me
Wow.
to hang, what I did is I doubled down on the masculinity. And I was like, I'm gonna allow nature to play a role. And then yeah,
Right.
I just started like being more of a masculine man, and like
Mm,
women that completely identify as like super progressives, they just naturally kind of fell in love. And
yeah.
I think they're tired of being men. They're
I would
exhausted
think
of being a
so.
woman
Yeah.
and to
Well,
have to
it has bucked nature. I mean, we definitely have over the past couple decades lost touch with what was came very natural. And I mean, you have kids. I mean, you see that without any learning or prompting or whatever, kids are naturally very aware of like boys and girls, and how many they count. Oh, there was 4 boys and 5 girls there because they know. And like then life, that stuff was very much learned later over the past few decades.
Yeah, no, no, that was on a couple levels. The Burning Man culture that I came up against in this advanced computation, like that's, I was an early user of the software Palantir, which
Oh yeah.
is like it started off as a spy software that measures relationships and everything. And so the book gets into that to say, and this is where I feel like this is going to do well, is to say, hey, if I've been working in AI for the past few years, and I've an early user of Palantir, my perspective is relevant. Like you might want to listen. And
Yeah.
and kind of getting into, I remember thinking what hippy dippy BS when they said, "Hey, we're going to measure relationships." And I'm like, we're going after homemade explosives and this and that. Like, what do you mean
Right.
relationships? And now, when you look at permaculture farming, it's like the relationship, the soil, the strawberry, to
Yeah.
the combustible engine, to the air, to all these
Yeah.
things, right? You sit there and I got into these realms, and like the people that are in that realm of computation, they were aware of what Palantir is doing. And this was back in Trump's first election. So I was like really subject to the cancel culture
Hmm.
where like I got into these like advanced computation communities, and they were like, who's the baby killer? And then I'd sit in there and I'd be like, no, 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 like I'm coming at this differently. And they're like, oh, who's the like high capacity baby killer? And you're like, and so I did go through some of the cancel culture of like digital colonialism and, white guy working in Africa.
Hmm.
And it was during the BLM stuff. And like now it's interesting that I can wear it as a badge of honor to
Yeah.
go and say, hey, like, why weren't you canceled? What was it that didn't make you palatable to those guys? And then too, also I've been able to spin even Africa. I'm like, like Napoleon got his ass kicked in Africa, Caesar got his ass kicked in Africa, Roosevelt got his ass kicked in Africa. Why haven't you gotten your ass kicked in Africa? Like,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
then
Well, I
see,
used to say that when I was in the DRC. What the hell is that guy's name? Freaking damn it. Uh, Everybody wears his T-shirt. He's like from South America. He was a
Che
big
Guevara.
yeah. Che
Yeah.
Guevara got his ass kicked there. Yes. And if that motherfucker could not survive there, but I lived there for 6 years, fuck him.
That's what I go. Yeah, people are like, I did 2 years straight in Liberia for Ebola. Like even the people that hate me, oh, that was.
Yeah.
And then
Seriously.
this idea of going back, the only way I could go back, and I have to win. Like there's that competition. It's not because I care. I
Hmm.
tell people constantly, especially with the homeless stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
do not think my decision making is tainted by caring. I don't. My ego gets fed by like being clever, and there's a blue ocean by solving the cognitive gaps of the underserved.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm going after. And I sit there and I go, I can see Africa rising because
That's the highest that's what I always said in Africa. The highest compliment I could give you is I'm not here for you. I don't give a fuck about you actually. Other than that, I actually find value in you that I would like to extract partially, but in a way that is capitalist and will actually benefit us both. But I'm not here for your charity or your well-being or because I give a shit. But that is a compliment. That is not like a greed thing. That's like okay, we are. I view us as human equals that have a deal to be made and that there's mutual value and in our collaboration. Not because I think you're lower than me and I need to help you because you're too stupid to help yourself.
yeah, it's like, no, I've aligned my intention from getting from here to there with yours. You're
Right.
welcome.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, this is part of me using my privilege.
Mm-hmm.
This is me, like I speak American English, which is put me in a massive advantage
It
in
does.
AI.
It does.
I think Trump's investment in AI has made the American culture is going to be dominant for like the other side had a chance. They had a chance to take this
I never
technology.
really thought about that. So if you prompt ChatGPT in a different language or in broken English,
Not as good.
oh shit, I never even thought
So
about that.
freaking far ahead. And the Europeans have regulated themselves out of relevance in this
Mm.
realm. Um, it once again comes down to, these models have been trained. They're,
Yeah.
we've actually
Well,
put
yeah,
training
and they
wheels on
have
them.
by far the biggest,
Data sets in English.
yeah,
American English. Like, I got to get that out there. It's not English
American
anymore.
English,
It's
yeah.
American, and American is the most spoken, like, and understood culture and thing on the planet. And now that we have this, so even my lefty buddies and business partners, it's funny, they hate Doge, right? And I sit there and I go, well, this is an American kind of gift to the world of accountability. And I was like, I'd like to go to some of my political contacts and see if we can export Doge. And working in Africa, if you can really point that gun of
Oh
accountability
boy, we
at
change
whoever's
everything.
in power, dude, you're gonna make like King Slayer,
Right.
King Maker. And
Yeah.
my buddy who hates Doge goes, "Oh yeah." I was like, "Oh, so accountability
Yeah. Oh,
is
so you
bad when
don't
it's
like
here."
government employees stealing billions of dollars for their
Yeah,
teams?
but if you go, and I first saw that, I did a proposal in Liberia for their IRS to help rebuild it, and I proposed this idea of putting webcams on the administrators' offices. And then as I came back to the States, I was like, why don't we have webcams on like these people's offices? I want to
Hmm.
see who's going to work, like what are you
Yeah.
doing? I want to see your screen, and I thought too, if I ever worked for an administration, like I'd probably put spyware on it and say I'm a public employee. I want everything I do to be kind of
I
like
bet they do.
watched. And guess
Yeah.
what? I'm going to make myself uncomfortable because I'm not going to sit here.
Yeah.
I'll do my time and get the hell out, and it's not going to be comfortable. If I make it
Right.
comfortable and you can see what I'm doing, yeah,
Yeah.
it's making it
Well,
uncomfortable
that's.
now.
I mean, the way that they insider trade now, though, they're just so they don't even give a shit to pretend anymore.
Yeah, it's
It's
not
very
even.
good.
Yeah, yeah. The
It's
protect when Bernie's a millionaire, when the guy makes millions saying I'm against millions, you're like, this system's so corrupt you can't
really,
help.
it's pretty bad. So
Yeah.
so paint the picture then. I love this concept. The post late you said the post labor economy. First of all, how many years does it take to get there? And paint the picture for the average American life, and then the life of someone around the globe.
Oh,
Particularly, does it change a third world country in a different way than the Western world, etc.?
oh man, chapter 7. It talks.
I
you
am
know,
gonna buy. First of all, what is the name of this book?
It's Be a Skunk.
Be
I
a
gotta,
Scum by
yeah,
Greg.
today I just did the last edit, so I gotta upload it, and I'm
Right
going
on.
to self-publish, and on purpose too. Like, I do have a 25,000 following on LinkedIn, so I feel like I can get enough movement.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I get into, once again, societies that are used to, because I get into a UBI, a universal basic income, which is going to be
Mm.
needed. But most people think of that as a government handout. Mine is a twofold. One is an investment clubs. So the SEC has special rules that we can self-organize and under the First Amendment, and we can kind of like build these teams of like investors up to 99, and you can't make a public offering. Those are the conditions. So that's where I want it. But you can scale by doing series, right? So if I get a
So you can have a
hundred,
club of clubs.
there we go, and then multiple clubs. So I think that your UBI is going to be like, my my investment club of the homeless. That'll be one, and then the
Mm.
restaurant, the chamber of commerce I'm in. They're all going to have their own little currencies. Everything gets localized. Your apps get localized. And all that interaction becomes localized. So it's going to kind of look how I live. Like I do kind of what I want, but I still work. I clean. I I have a lot of choice.
Mm.
Um, so there's that. You'll have some social credit scores. Like I talk about how it can get dystopian when you have these kind of like, oh, you don't have this rank in this thing, so you can't like, and that's
Mm.
bad. In that I always point to be a Chinese fighter pilot right now, your family has to have a perfect voting record, and you can kind of
That's
sit there with
true,
it.
right?
Yeah, so you're just like, that's the road you go down when it's too
Mm.
centralized, and it's not about merit, it's about what you and your family are doing, and then you don't even
Mm.
qualify to get into the right, avenues to get up into those types of jobs. So it does change. The book, I also argue that these periphery communities are going to lead the way. So these villages in Africa, you sit there and you say they have less invested in the status quo,
Mm.
which gives them less to break down. So,
Yeah.
is this idea that Africa rises as part of the West falling? or it's just like, oh, like if banking collapses or there's nuclear exchanges, nobody's going to waste a nuke on Liberia. Well, now all of a sudden, real estate just went way the fuck up in Liberia, like
Right. Yeah.
banking collapses. So, okay, these value exchange things, like this all started from me building these grids out in the thing. And like my first paper on AI was back before we even met, when I talked about putting AI to manage these grids.
Hmm.
And then you started saying, oh, this is where, the internet kind of comes from the bottom up. When I was in Miami, I got to talk to some space people that said, wow, we never realized that the same strategy you have for building internet in rural Africa is how they see the internet running in space. That it has to be these mesh networks of like running computation locally, almost like your Apple AirDrop, right? Like the
Right.
computation just runs between devices. So, um, so here in the West, yeah, I think that we'll have some problems. All the data is kind of going to bite us in the ass. I started thinking about, consulting with police stations and go, oh, I could take all the unsolved crimes, put them into my AI bots, and then start coming up with new leads, this, that, and the other. And I went, maybe cold cases in a police station are cold for a reason.
Yeah.
I
No
don't want to go
kidding.
around solving cases and end up being a case myself. And then I started thinking, like, okay, if you look at simulated data, and if we start taking all these data points, and if you've ever, like, for example, I've asked about 8 months ago, I asked AI to take my history. Like, I scraped all my history, I fed it all my internet history, and I told it to break me down.
Hmm.
Tell me who I am, tell me what I am, and it did.
No, really.
Scary,
Really.
scary, scary, scary to the
That's
point that
cool.
you just look at my internet history, you look at the way I work with AI. I asked my chat GPT to analyze me based on the way I interact with it. And it analyzed me pretty well.
Wow.
And so that's where I kind of get that dystopian, like if there's radical alignment in the future where all massive hacks plus simulated data takes all this data, and then you have these realities that you can go back and say with 98% probability we think this happened,
Hmm.
and then you go back and like it's like every crime,
Right.
every affair, and then you start getting into all your sins being revealed and shouted from the rooftops, the last days, all that stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can kind of see this once again, this biblical kind of thing where you can't hide from your sins, that everyone will be, judged for what they did. And this is where the West starts eating itself, right? Cancel culture, Holocaust. Holocaust was just cancel culture. Everybody's so impure. Everyone did something wrong. You said something bad
Hmm.
15 years ago,
But
right?
hasn't that already happened? You think it can get worse?
Yeah, and that's where that hyper accountability is, where it's like, okay, let's just say. So one of my fears is like math has been solved, right? It's a matter of time before math is solved. So that means encryption's dead, banking's dead,
There's still
crypto's.
some, isn't the quantum math still out there?
Who's using that?
Well, and
Hopefully,
maybe
Facebook
that
is
becomes
now.
like your times tables in 100 years. Is all these it's quantum things that people don't even know yet.
Yeah, no, we're not gonna be. We're gonna look like Neanderthals to ourselves, I believe. I do
Right.
think we're gonna live longer lives. Like in the next 5, 10 years, we'll probably have regenerative drugs, and we have to contemplate a society in which grandfather and grandson are biologically 25. I feel like Gen X will probably be the last like Western demographic to have some kind of trouble or problem. So I feel like if I contemplate an idea that I live very long and I'm biologically 25, I will outperform everybody. Like
But everybody will. Again, it's like that's the whole thing. Is like the rising tide. Like if everybody rises to this point, so that here's a question.
focus becomes like that's where even now, like right now,
Exactly.
focus becomes
Exactly.
a business
So like
commodity.
motivation, right? And I think the motivator for anybody that's alive now is the fear that something's going to go wrong and I have to have, like you said, I need to hoard resources for the bad times. And I think that is what drives anybody to be greedy, or even ambitious, is like I need to have enough so that when something goes bad I can withstand. Like I think that's an instinct. Like I need, if you go 500 years back, like I'm going to build this stick hut, and then I'm going to build more, and I'm going to get axes, and I'm going to get bear rugs, and I'm going to get like all this stuff so that I can keep my family cold or warm in the winter and fed and blah 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 blah. But let's say you can get to a point where truly like your basic survival is no longer in question.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back.
Does everybody at that point get super lazy, or do they get super communal and motivated? I guess that's
Both,
the question.
both, both. Like it's one of those. We're at our fattest, but we're also at our like most marathon runners ever. The crazy shit people do in CrossFit by
No,
my
that's true.
600-pound life. So
Right.
we'll have that mixed bag of
Yeah.
of where people lie, and I go back to once again working out and sex, right? Like,
Hmm.
I I guess I still pursue sex, even though like I could, most people can get it, like it's not
Yeah.
like that scarce, that scarce, that scarce, and so there's still that pursuit, there's that pursuit
Yeah.
to get it or to get better or to get a different type or quality,
Right.
to change your experience, and that's where the motivations of experience, right? Like to maybe travel or have something authentic, or I get into the book about family. Family is an example of interaction that's outside of a market.
Hmm.
And you start kind of like banking these things to say, all right, like, people take care of their kids, knowing that when they get older, their kids will then return the favor and take care of them, right? What is it? Families can also be toxic though too. Like that's where it kind of
Yeah.
gets into, if you start getting into what does it look like when you start.
But there is a tremendous innate urge for it, especially amongst kids. They want parental, uh, they want that affirmation and whatnot, and they want to belong to the family.
Yeah,
So there's
and
nothing
men
really
crave
shitty.
leadership, right? Like we all are kind of looking for leadership and things. That gets
Right.
into like when we talk about these groups and clubs, sometimes I'll be in charge of one, right? Like I'll feel like my merit, my skills are rate to
Hmm.
be in that. There's going to be things I don't want to. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you take charge in this and I'll
Hmm.
participate and I'll be lesser. And, so I think it's kind of like how you choose to participate in systems.
Hmm.
The chambers of commerce, I think, will have a new relevance once again when we talk about like community apps and community
Yeah.
economies. I feel like restaurants, I think, are a good one where you go in, you're going to start gambling locally. I think too, like this
Hmm.
idea that you start putting stakes. Like if you go and you run your fantasy football, and maybe your karaoke night and your trivia night all through the restaurant app, and
Hmm.
20% gets staked, and everyone starts like this community starts eating together, investing together, and then after the little league game, everyone comes in because they know a percentage is going to this, and you start building these generate boom, and you're like, now I'm going off of Applebee's or this local currency that's being shared by the Chamber of Commerce, right? So now I can like do all this credit here and then spend it in another store, and you really get hyper localized. You get
That's interesting.
really invested into your neighborhood and community. This is where too, you got to think. Rome is older than Italy. New York is older than America, and your city states are going to be that new functioning government and identity.
Mm.
Maybe the federal government doesn't service the corruptions in the billions. I don't care what side you're on or the other. Like it's still hard to justify the shenanigans, like
Yeah,
on
that's
all
for sure.
levels. You sit there, but locally we do have a stake. We do need these systems. The fired, I need water in the cisterns for fires, and there's homeless on the street, and the trash needs to be picked up.
Interesting.
That's where I feel like we're going to get back to more local society.
I like that idea a lot, and I really hope that's true. Now, what about like thinking bigger in terms of resources? So, eventually, hopefully, we have a bit of time, but eventually, we're going to need to vacate this planet, and I don't know that we're going to get there with the amount of fighting. We spend a huge amount of our resources as a humanity just killing each other. Imagine if that could all be redirected at something mutually beneficial.
Well, two things. Like one, yeah, I'm just as disappointed that like the EU thought it was like efficient to destroy the Red Army through artillery, right? I thought they were supposed to make decisions based on the planet. I don't see where that was followed.
Right.
But then I guess on some levels, it's like, how do we start killing each other in space? That would push us.
Well, that's the real motivation. It's true. That's
Yeah, until
true.
we have space wars, that's what's going to excel us out there. That's what's pushing us.
Interesting.
My time at the Pentagon, we started seeing moves like warfare moves in space. Where when Trump came in and said it's a realm of warfare, I agreed and I understood what he did. That's another one of
Well,
those where
I'm surprised, frankly. Like, all you'd have to do is go in there and bomb another country's satellites, and you'd totally fuck them up. I wonder why that hasn't happened yet.
or yeah, or been threatened to, or
Yeah,
that's where I feel
I
like that's
mean,
leverage.
really. I mean, I don't think I'm saying I don't think I'm saying anything that somebody else hasn't already thought of at a much higher level than myself. But even I don't even know how that would affect the ability to deploy nuclear bombs. But like, if you were able to go take out an entire country's satellites, which
Yep.
to my knowledge aren't guarded, but I don't know anything about it. But I feel like it's not impossible. You could really have an upper hand for a long time to go in there and invade and do the other things. And how's that not happened?
Yeah, no, I think if you look at kind of information warfare and from that extraterrestrial level, Ukraine does have some of that, right? Like Elon was pumping internet in,
Yeah.
Arab Spring. I think
Hmm.
Facebook pumped internet into Egypt during that, and
Yeah.
you look at all attempts to control information end up like doing the opposite.
Right.
Uh, I think that on another level too, what I'm recommending in this new level of abundance, like this idea that nobody will be poor in this kind of like
Hmm.
round the corner kind of thing, does set the economic conditions for further space exploration, right? When
Yeah.
billions aren't being spent on Ebola, like
Yeah.
or starvation. There's going to be this cascading impact of efficiency,
Hmm.
and as these AI systems start taking over, things become more efficient. There's less like wasted human effort that it'll relate. The second thing I believe that's going to happen that nobody's really calculating is the use of mushrooms in building materials. Like everyone thinks of metals, and you start going down this route of like mining and extraction to
Hmm.
get the needed materials for computation and robotics.
Hmm.
But I see a complication when we start really cracking the mycelium, and you start making these hardened like mushroom things where you can like run gigabytes or qubits of information on mushrooms that are grown in very easy facilities. Uh, Robots are basically
I
AI.
am not familiar with this. You're gonna have to explain. So they're using that as basically like a CPU.
Yeah, so they found that the mycelium network,
Hmm.
mushrooms
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, yeah. Which I have heard that's like the biggest organism in the world or whatever.
Yeah, imagine
It's
you
just
start
all
running
connected.
computation in little like chips with that, and then it's not this like, oh, only chips can be made in Taiwan, and there's only these like, no, it's going to proliferate to the point that we
Wow.
all can like grow our own company.
Democratize high-powered chips as well, because that is the that is the resource constraint at the moment when it comes to AI. Is well, and then it's energy next, but within a few decades we should have fusion, which will then turn the world on its head.
Those are the accelerants that I don't think people are calculating that because here's the thing is like I can tell. So governments aren't using AI. The only ones that are really using it were like North Korea. They were using Chat GPT and they got busted. That's like,
They
and
got
then
busted. Why
yeah,
is it
like you always
illegal?
well, no, or like scams. Hey, the Iranians are doing this, the North
Oh,
Koreans are doing that. Like it was
okay.
easy to kind of like get it. They were using AI as a way to accelerate their ambitions.
Mm,
Sure,
mm,
now like so I'm talking to guys that are negotiating with the government and certain things and then they sit there and they're like, dude, you don't know, they're behind. And I'm like, oh yeah, this if LLMs just kind of started proliferating 2 years ago and you
yeah.
understand government procurement cycles, there was no budget for it and it wasn't put in. And
Mm,
now as I'm somebody who plays with these tools early, and I can see these tools aren't made for teams, these are all individuals. So
yeah.
now there's this cadre of individuals, I being one, to say, hey, I'm pretty good at using these AI tools. I use a bunch of them,
Hmm.
blah, blah, blah. But what I haven't been able to do is get a freaking team to coordinate to use them because everyone's going through their own psychological problems with it. And then they get their kind of relationship with it. Then,
Mm,
so they're all going through this kind kind of like thing. And I noticed that even the tools and the guys making these tools, I can't even have a Teams account. When I build on something, I can't have somebody even come in and build on. So I mean, they're not
Yeah.
even doing it. They're not even like really working together. So you think the NSA, you think the FBI, nobody's really doing it yet. The skill isn't into the labor force,
Hmm.
and the tech isn't there. I can imagine that maybe in Palantir they've been working
Yeah,
with.
I was just gonna say that's like Palantir's whole thing, though, and they're a big
Yeah,
government
but
company.
I can't even see that like when you look at the government procurement, like yeah, maybe with certain programs in AI they can demonstrate what you can get a sole source contract by demonstrating a unique positioning. So
Hmm.
maybe they said, "Hey, sole source us, and we're going to go AI all the way." But I don't know. I haven't seen it reflected, and I don't think the government has the discipline. We
Yeah.
leak like a sieve. Somebody
Yeah, that is true.
somebody
That
would
is
be out there
true.
be like, "We do we're an AI." So I
Yeah.
using myself as kind of like a benchmark to say, OpenAI and these guys come out with a tool or new capability. I'm watching the AI, the YouTubers. I've even have contacted a few in certain
Hmm.
communities with these guys, and then I'm implementing them into my clients' work. So that is the procurement cycle. So anything outside. So if you come to me as a university and like, oh, we have a curriculum in AI, like unless it was constructed 8 hours ago, it's irrelevant. you know, and then you know,
Yeah.
and then it's same with the government. Oh, we're going to do it once again. If you're not fresh and nimble on
Yeah.
what's going on right now, then it's an outdated system. So this is where it comes into you have to build something that evolves. And I've caught my new AI startup called Evervolve, and it just highlights the importance of starting now and imperfect. And this also comes up with skunkworks, like the philosophy of launching prototypes early and imperfect. So right now if I built you an AI app, you're welcome that it's imperfect
Hmm.
because you're just starting now. Like if I go back to my buddy just got into some high net worth realms in Rhode Island and like New England, and
Hmm.
I started thinking, I'm like, man, the people that came over were criminals, right? Like the first pilgrims, there was warrants for their arrest. That's why they
Yeah.
were in France, and then they were
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
kicked out of there too. And I was like, and now they're like early participation in the system is rewarded. So they were Euro trash that comes over here. Now it's like
Yeah.
some of the wealthiest families in our society.
Interesting.
And so that's where I feel like, when you start putting AI agents into your work, into your workflow, into your life,
Hmm.
it's just the importance of getting started.
Yeah.
To-
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very cool. So here's what I fear as it relates to AI, and I've said this before. I don't think so. I know there's a lot of people that are afraid of AI and like what it could do. I don't think AI will ever have the intrinsic motivation to destroy humanity. I think it will enable humanity to destroy humanity better than it does. But I'm not even fearful because for every action, there's a reaction, there's a countermeasure. So I'm not even like, oh, there's going to be some event. I think apathy, the slow and apathetic and miserable, disgusting demise of this fat, lazy society, and specifically because you've brought up sex. So you can already mimic basically the writing and and even the voice of a person in short order if it doesn't exist already, and I haven't googled it. There will be some sort of robot that can mimic sex
It'll
at that
read your
point.
biometrics. It'll know what that type of thing.
Right.
It'll be better at sex. Um,
So when that happens, now you've replaced the need to go find people to go do anything. You can just order up, your dream lover, and then you're not procreating. Then you are just worthless. Now, how does that work?
so the mixed bag, yes, and maybe it does. And a new level of peace, like a big source of instability, or military-aged males that have no, like what do you call it, like reproductive options. And I
Right.
kind of felt that way. So part of my experience of being left in the middle of African villages, I was a dude that had no money.
Hmm.
And for a few years, there was no sexual options. Unless it like fell into my lap, like
Yeah.
it was all on charm, charisma, because I couldn't afford to take
Right.
her out or anything like that. So I felt that fightiness.
Hmm.
I felt that like I was
Yeah.
I'm coming back from Africa. I'm scrounging. Rich people are taking advantage of me. I'm here, there, blah, 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 blah. And I'm ready to burn the thing down. And there is an African saying that says, take care of the young men or else they'll burn the village to feel the warmth. And I definitely felt that like kind of burn
That's true, man.
that when you don't have that option. So, okay, so if there is this youth bulge and we do have a lot of fighty young men that need companionship, sure, because like even when like people kind of always tell me like, porn bad, porn bad. It's another thing that got me through that time from not like going nuts was like if you
Yeah.
don't have sexual option, yeah, porn's bad. I'm always
Yeah.
told porn's bad by like people that like had that option, like a girl like, you can turn around like there's
Right.
Tinder, you can get it anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I think too, when you look at people's options and happiness quotients and things like that, yeah, maybe. Will it then get into birth rates will decline in my idea that there's going to be a lot of economic prosperity. So maybe that's a
Yeah,
good
that always happens with
you
economic.
know yeah, so that's why Western society has a lower birth rate. So would this be like this idea of injecting these systems into the East help bring down those birth rates, right? Like you don't have to have as many kids because you're going to be okay in the long run. You've banked that
Interesting.
value for the
So
yeah.
it's not a bad thing, is what you're saying. Maybe that.
Yeah. That like okay, sure. I mean, and once again, if monogamy, this is where I'm kind of getting into too. Like,
Yeah.
oh, in a realm of abundance, you know what kept your great grandma and grandfather together? Like hard times.
Mm-hmm.
Like
That's
grandma
true.
was, I'm sure she got sick of his shit, but she went, I need this house and food and blah, blah, blah. These days, especially here in LA, where everyone has their own health care, you have basically a basic income. Like if you're inside a
Yeah.
rented house, like they can't even kick you out of that. So, the women, when they look at me and they calculate, they're like, I don't need you,
Yeah.
right?
That's
And so,
true.
like, I can't even make a mistake. I can't even I can't even lose my temper.
Yeah.
Grandpa could lose his temper. He could have an alcoholic problem, and blah blah blah. Grandma was high. She's like, hey, I can't be alone. Can't be an old maid.
Yeah.
But
That's
now
true.
with so much choice, what does it mean? So I don't know, and I do feel like there has been, and I saw this even among the lefty liberals, in Florida that were like more in the Burning Man culture, is this return to wholesomeness,
Mm.
and there was this like recognition of masculine and feminine energy,
Mm.
and they wanted to go in that way. So maybe, like, I am convinced, like every time I meet somebody, I'm like, in 6 months you're gonna hate me, right? Like today's modern psyche, social media, I won't be able to provide for you in the way emotionally, this and the other. Like, so I even started looking at putting, I almost put it in a slide once to a woman where I was just like, come hang out for 30 days, whatever, whatever, whatever. We'll play house. And then at that 30 days, it probably won't like it's already pushing it,
Yeah.
but
Perfect.
and maybe we'll create something together. That's
Yeah.
kind of where I felt too. Is like, I've even heard this too. I start to see creep. People say they date most on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
and it's like, okay, so
Wow.
LinkedIn is a better place to kind of see someone's true intentions and their true like where they're trying to go, what they're trying to do, better than Tinder.
Interesting.
And I was
Interesting.
like, oh, I can kind of see that. Like, yeah, could I engage with somebody, say boom, 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 and then go,
Hmm.
you're a modern woman, let's do this for 90 days. And at the end, we'll have this it's to
Yeah.
show for it, and then call it quits and we'll be lifelong friends. Because once again,
That's
like,
like Brave New Worldish to me. That sounds very, maybe not dystopian, but
it is, and here's my thing too. This is just for me because, like, being a Rolling Stone, not having roots, bouncing around from place to place, I've had to build trust. The first time I heard that story about Stone Soup, you ever hear that? Like, these I heard it as Revolutionary War soldiers were rejected by a village, and then they went and they set up a cauldron in the middle of the village and put stones in it, and then everyone's like, "What are you guys doing?" And they're like, "Well, it's making stone soup, but if we had some onions, it'd be really good." And all
hmm,
and everyone brings
that's
out, and then the whole
interesting.
community comes. And I always remember going, "Why would anybody hate a Revolutionary War veteran?" But we're loaded. We come with our baggage, this, that, and the other. I'm not the first veteran to feel rejected from the society he fought for. Uh, uh, you just kind of sit there and say a lot of my ideas have come from being rejected and being a square peg, not in a round hole. Like here's one, and this is a weird intimacy. I sleep on the floor, and I have ever since coming back from Africa. I got to a
Mm,
hard bed. I can't. It's not that I sleep on the floor; it's that I can't sleep in a bed.
mm,
So when you talk about companionship, and you sit there and you go, "Okay, it sounds cool, but it takes a woman 2 weeks to get annoyed with it." And then when she goes,
surprised it takes that long, actually.
yeah, and then you're like, it's cool, it's novel, and then it's just like, you mean you can't hold me at night? You mean there's no,
Right.
yeah, and I'm like, yeah, I don't fit in a couple, I don't fit in a
Yeah.
couple. And then I was talking to it with a group where I was talking about how like the sense of family's dead in the West, like most of the planet family, they're in one room houses.
Hmm.
They're all in the same bed, and that's where it kind of came to. I was like, I can't even sleep in the same bed as somebody when most of humanity's in one bed.
Right.
And when then one most of humanity's in one bed, mom and dad are having sex in that bed. You know,
That's
family life is going like living in rural Africa, like I lived in the Amazon for a few years, and I used to always like walk up and Brazilians were beautiful and like always sensual and stuff like that, and I used to sit there and be like, everyone lives in one room.
yeah.
Nobody's closing here, just like, oh, they're doing it. And that's how you learn, And then I think the book On Killing by Rex Grossman, he actually talks about
That's a
how
good one.
the
Yeah.
intimate act and like, when we got multi-room dwellings, right? That privacy came in.
Mm,
Um,
interesting.
so maybe, we start going back to some of these more um, true human interactions
Mm. So
that,
let
that
me ask you. Let me ask you about music, because I love music. I like to listen to it, make it. I think music is a very interesting concept because it can generate strong emotions and very you know definitive times in your life. Like people can hear a song, especially in your formative years. All anybody hears songs that were like around when they were in high school. Like it brings you back. It creates you know bonds with people and so forth. Um, and I don't quite understand it, but I don't even. That's the one thing I try not to analyze because I'm just going to take it for granted. Music is special in some way, but AI certainly has the propensity to ruin that, and is already. I mean, you can like for 6 cents, you can make a song about anything now. But is it garbage? But how
because
does
like
it
everyone's an artist, right? Like that camera
exactly?
again, everyone can take a picture. Are most
Right.
pictures crappy? Yeah. Um, and I like that you bring it up too, because some of the first inventions and innovations in humanity were beats and drum beats, syncopated work. I remember in Quendine that they have songs to pull out a tree stump, and everyone knew the song. And I started thinking, what song does every American know? It was like the Hokey Pokey. That's probably like we all know, right? Uh, Drums were used in warfare, signaling, all
Yep.
those things like that.
Sure.
So one of the things I feel like we can do when I get back to this alternative ways of coding and like the anthropological kind of justification for code is tool building, right? Like I feel like I
Hmm.
can build tools. So
Yep.
one of them I want to do is to say, let's take a certain like riff, a boom, boom, chick, boom, 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 chick. I can tell an AI when you hear that riff, set up a Bitcoin wallet. Boom, boom, chick, boom, 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 chick. And then when you hear the guitar come in, you get now I want you to buy this, I want you to do that, do that. So I can associate the music to code. And think
Interesting.
about this too with like dance, like especially in motion capture, right? Can I
Hmm.
do this move, this dance move, and then you go execute this code? So
Hmm.
now when you think of Africa, all these little kids dancing all the time, could
Right.
I code through a song and through choreography or music? I can then code out a tool or even
Hmm.
storytelling, right? I get back down to this idea that I can tell a
And it
story.
would be something more fundamental because, like, you're talking about a feeling, like coding a feeling. Like it would be one thing to do something utilitarian, like make a Bitcoin wallet, but if you could code, like, make an app that feels like this, that's
Ooh.
pretty high level.
No, you're right. And what's funny is I was talking to somebody because this whole idea of like I'm building onboarding experiences and I want a personality assessment as people come into my apps, right? And that way the AI can A, tailor experience according to them, and then B, when you know your community, they can better value match, team build, things like that. And and so yeah, so we are going through this whole idea, and this guy tells me, he goes, my kid has an app that like helps him get better and pumps him up and gives him ideas and things. And I'm like, yes, self-improvement. Your tailored software is the intermediate between you and that device. And it's got to be meaningful. It's got to be a moment that matters. It's got to make you smarter. So even like when I go back to that AI transparency statement where I used 5 AIs to write my book, and if you look at the weeks, I sat there and I just like wrestled with digital God, sitting there trying to work these things out. And you sit there and you say, the thousands of tokens or millions of tokens I used to crank this book out, and the interaction between my neural network and the neural network of the machine.
Yeah.
And my neural network's gone up, and I can kind of tell. I started getting into this, like I see why religious groups work together, because if you believe that talking to God and living a certain lifestyle gets blessings in abundance, then why would you work with somebody who's not talking to God and not worthy of those blessings? So when I go around looking for people to work with, I can quickly tell if you're talking to God. I can quickly tell if you're talking to AI. If I say something about a business strategy and you sit there and go, that's crazy, I know you're not using the same tools I am. But if you're using these AI tools that I'm using every day and you're working out and then looking and all it's saying to you is like, do you want me to fix this? I think I should do this, that, the other, yes or no. And I hit yes, and then I go do another set, come back, hit yes, do another set. Then I go, all right, a monkey could do this, and then prisoners almost you sit there and you go, all right, I can get these low capacity people and help them participate in the system, and boom,
Yeah.
so it doesn't make sense if you're not working it. Like if you think coding's hard, if you think it sounds complicated to do these things, then of course I come to you with that business plan. You're going to dismiss me, and I sound like a naive
Yeah. Yeah.
businessman.
So, when you were talking about like when you enter, where you enter, this next phase of humanity, you will stay. Do you envision? Do you envision a time when you can't? Like what separates one from the other at that point? Is it something born creativity? Is it work ethic? Is it just where, like, if you were born rich, you were born rich, like it's a bourgeois thing, or like what makes anybody different at that point?
Right. Okay. So yeah, this is good because you get into this myth of merit, right? Like there's the deserving poor, and it's more about access. And I know that in the last presidential election, like you can't agree with everything everyone, one side says. And there was this kind of justification. I think it's one of those where it's one of the falsehoods that you should keep, where it's almost like the cold doesn't make you sick, but it's good to protect yourself from the cold, right? It's germs, it's all these other things. And it's kind of those things where it's like there's no merit in our system, but it's good to kind of strive for a meritorious system because that's how you kind of get the best out of you. Um, so you're right. It is going to be position, access, luck, timing, your parents, all that stuff. But there is an opportunity to kind of grab as we're going into it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I should. And then there's going to be some guys, there's going to be some bushmen that go from bushman to trillionaire. That has to happen. And it's going to be wild. And I hope to be like right next to it as it goes.
It's basically about just doing it. Just who is going to act? Who is going to not be afraid to act?
Yeah, and that's where, and who's not going to be afraid to be like, there's a defeatist mentality in AI right now, where I've noticed it in Europe, where like, oh, the big guys are going to take it all, and the big guys are setting up the server farms. But this is where I come in and go, oh, you're right. I see that fear, but you don't want to be on those server farms, or you don't want your most sensitive operations, like your security, like your home security, like the app your wife talks to you on. You don't want it on there because I could emulate your wife's voice and tell her, she's telling you, hey, have you ever heard those scams? There's a thing called Levant Labs, and they can just get your voice. And then, they call your parents with your voice and say, Mom, like, seriously, don't call the cops, but they got me, and send a Bitcoin, send whatever, that type of thing. And so I just feel like, yeah, it's one of those like, hey, let's get wealthy people to start with, you know, and pay for it. Like put the server in your house, and then I can manage your security system. You're going to need security drones. When you start talking about robotics and like right now, I have a swarm of AI. When that AI starts embodying, like I need that AI to then serve me in drones. It needs to serve me in bots and robots. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm starting this campaign to kind of say like we can take smart devices and make them wise. You know, and you add intuition and wisdom into your smart devices, it brings a new level of like protection, right? Like if I tell these bots and agents to look out for my best well-being, then it will. And it'll get adaptive, it'll change itself to accomplish its mission. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, there might be people out there that'll say otherwise, right? Like I fear this whole swarm of drones that they did in Ukraine into Russia,
Yeah,
the Israelis did into Iran. Phew, I see that here. Oof. 10,000
that's crazy,
drones
man.
being released into an urban area, and each one has a little bullet-sized explosive, and you're on some
Mm-hmm.
list because of your internet history, and China's coming on, bow, or cops, or like one of my scenarios of urban destruction is like the Chinese come in and they just take out 40% of LAPD, and then let the natural violence take over. you know?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's true too.
So I
So basically, what you're saying, which I could get on board with, is the idea that there was class mobility was a bit of a myth anyway, and it's kind of true. I mean, the vast majority of people end up where they started. That's just true, and this is not going to necessarily be too much different. You can still have the rags to riches stories, but they'll be probably pretty slim as they are today.
There might be so there'll be a rise, like especially like say Africa rises, right? Like say
Mm-hmm.
this computation comes and like there's these new communities that just start having this overwhelming abundance, and then too, yeah, there's a population halving in the West. You know,
Mm-hmm.
people always contemplate the end of society, but it's like there's been times in humanity which half the population goes away,
Mm-hmm.
and we may be up on one of those, and so. Yeah, so could it be this new kind of wealth class that comes out of what we consider poor or low value now? But once again, with there's nuclear holocaust or the cities are eating themselves or
Mm-hmm.
tidal waves and all the stuff that's happening, um, you know, we kind of like looked at, and that's my point. Is that's where I'm coming in to say, here's a tool that takes care of white collar jobs. So
Mm-hmm.
can I push those
Yeah.
white collar kind of like functions down to the lower levels and then ride that wave? And that's kind of what I'm banking on. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's a really interesting concept. So what is the bet in 10 years from now? What's the best change from today? What's the best thing that's gonna happen?
so I think that regenerative drugs within 10 years, a society in which we're kind of getting younger, not older. That's
Hmm.
something that like, just like in the internet, like in our lifetime, like
Is that really good though? I've thought about that. You really want to live forever? Doesn't that take? I think time. I think the constraint of time is what makes it interesting. Even though you don't want to die and get old, but like it gives you the urgency to get shit done while you can.
yeah, but here's the weird thing of being an elder in 100 years. Like, say we do achieve this thing, and we were the last
It'd be so much
generations to even
longer.
know that there was death. That we're actually like living. And you know what? Death won't be gone. You're right. It won't be immortality because there'll still be hurricanes and flash floods and terrorist acts. So it might just be old age. That's like,
Yeah.
there'll still be death. You know,
Yeah.
um, so that may not go away. The finality of it, because you're right. That
Hmm.
does create this like special dynamic into the human condition that we know it's perishable.
What's the worst thing in 10 years? What's the biggest bad change?
Nuke exchange.
Do you think it's inevitable?
Almost. And then too, I think mass suicides. Part of the like surviving the next thing will be mass suicides. Cancel the culture will kind of go off the hinges when
Wow.
this like I always throw it to my friend. She says her son came out as trans, and I was like, oh, statistically he's not. And I was like, tell him to do this. I said, tell him to make this decision as if in 5 years there'll be a spit test that tells you if you have it or not. And everyone that doesn't have it's going to be canceled hard, like as if they were in blackface this whole time. And I think and whenever I bring that up to somebody, I think I can see the wheels turning, going, yeah, you're right. I might be, I might have to prove this in
Right.
real time. And if I don't, it's going to be, you just jumped on the suffering of somebody,
Yeah.
for attention.
No, it's true.
Yeah. So I think that's where, when society comes into hyper realignment, when banking collapses because cryptography's gone. My
Mm.
fear is, and I talked to a movie producer in this, like, say the United States, because we own most of AI, let's just say we do hack the world's global nuclear arsenal. Maybe here in a couple months, Putin's getting briefed saying, "Hey, the Americans solve math, and sir, if we don't use them, we lose them." All the billions that the Russian society has put into these weapons are, maybe become obsolete. All their investment
Do
in their.
you do you do you feel that let's say they launch them all, can we shoot them all down from the sky?
So I'm coming into, once again, that big thing, or once again, this is good to be an American. We're inoculated. Europe is completely destroyed.
Yeah.
That's where I think it might take place, Europe and
Oh
China.
wow.
The centralized, like, our problems come from centralization, and our benefits come from a decentralized elite. The American elite has started in the East Coast, moved to the manufacturing Midwest, and now is in the
Mm.
tech West Coast.
Mm.
The fact that it moves and migrates, China has one path,
Mm.
the Europeans have their royal path.
Mm-hmm.
It's only here that we have the benefits of the 1,000 year, 2,000 year European society with the openness, which
Mm.
created more of the ability to have a merit. And that's also why we're violent, right? Like, we've had the real struggle. We've had, um,
It's true.
well, they say that we're a microcosm of the five major shifts, or migrations from England during the English Civil War. And the English during the English Civil War were weird. They were Western, educated, industrialized, religious, and armed. Weird A. So they killed a king, and because of that civil war, a lot of them came to the States. So they came with their guns, and they came with their anti royal sentiment and their anti education sentiment, because Oxford and all the universities were used by the elite to kind of keep people down. You see that manifest today, where people are like, "Oh, you don't believe in university?" Yeah, very American to kind of push back on universities, because they get entrenched and they keep the aristocracy. So if you kind of look at, like, why American, we're just like individually violent Europeans and redneck Europeans, kind of that way. But then on the other level, like, I get on Europe for all its regulations, but then I said, you know what? It's good that Europe's regulated. Those people kill each other like you wouldn't believe. They need all those rules.
Yeah.
And, that's where I feel like, once again, if they're suffering from problems of centralization, if Xi and Putin they're not getting straight dope. Their intelligence services are too full of, like, once again, this lack of merit, this, you're in step, right?
There is.
We're guilty of it. But we're the best of the rest. That's what I feel like. Like, we're suffering from centralization, but they're really suffering from it. That's why they can't even beat Ukraine. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which is crazy. Well, that and we've given them a lot of stuff, but
Yeah.
so if I summarize the 10 years, so we are going to have basically a universal standard of living. We will be able to leverage the maximum capacity of what is currently latent computational talent, power in society. It'll be tough to rise above. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think, look, it comes down to land and then commodities. So food production, gold. Like, actually, Liberian president just met with Trump today, so I got
I
some
saw
calls.
that, and he didn't know that freaking people speak English in
Who
Liberia.
knows that? And you know what? We're Africanists, but
Yeah,
Americans aren't. I had, it was cringy, but
that was funny.
that
So, so you yeah, so it's gonna be there, but those even those resources like food would be relatively abundant because even the processes to produce food should be aided by technology and so forth. So, in general, there'll be a much lower risk of running out of any resource that provides life, whether that's medicine, food, and whatnot. Sounds like it'll be pretty easy to get laid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all you have to do is dodge a few nukes.
Perfect.
That sounds good.
That's a good thing. Yeah. That's the mixed bag, right? You're not getting a utopian smoke up your butt. You're getting dodge a few nukes, live in the third world, and you might
Yeah,
make
man.
it.
Yeah.
And you'll get laid. Yeah.
Oh man, that's super interesting. All right, so one more time. So the book is "Be a Skunk"
Be a skunk.
by Greg Kerr.
Preparing for
Where is this
post-labor
coming?
economics.
Be a Skunk. Prepare for post-labor economics.
Yeah.
And this is going to be available where?
So I'm putting on Amazon. I'll put on Google Play. I'm setting up a school community and a
Cool.
Patreon. School SKOOL, and
Mm-hmm.
I'll send you the links on all that. I build it out
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
And it's this once again, it's practicing where to preach. I want to. The goal of the book is to get 99 people. If I could
Nice.
get 99 people to like buy it, read it,
Well,
understand
you're
it,
gonna get one because
dang.
I'm stoked to read this. I'm
And
very,
I
very
feel like
stoked.
it's gonna go. I really do think it's a relevant topic.
It
My
is. It's super
background,
cool.
and you can kind of see. Yeah, I got to go to DC and kind of talk to my old colleagues and
Yeah,
friends that are now in government, and let's see if we can make some change.
that's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, I'll definitely provide me with the links. I want to share those. I definitely want to download it myself. It has been really super interesting to talk this stuff. Maybe I'd love to do this again
Please.
in a month or two, because like you said, there will be changes between now and then.
Oh yeah.
And this stuff is super interesting. So, yeah, your your perspective on it between the government stuff, the military stuff, the third world stuff, and being in the thick of AI, it's pretty. It's a pretty good breadth of where we're headed. So, appreciate it, man. It's this stuff is super cool and it's a really interesting take. So, I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
All right.
Right on. Stop this. Yeah, dude, that was